The forests of North America are vast beyond imagination, stretching endlessly across Canada and the northern United States. These wildernesses have swallowed entire settlements, erased trails, and hidden secrets for centuries. In winter, they transform into something even more hostile. Snow buries the ground, sound disappears, and survival itself becomes uncertain. It is in this silence that the legend of the Wendigo was born. Long before maps were drawn or borders were named, indigenous tribes of the Algonquin-speaking nations lived in these lands. They understood the forest in ways modern civilization never could. They knew that winter was not merely a season, it was an enemy. Food could vanish overnight. Storms could isolate families for months. Hunger was a constant threat, and desperation could push even good people toward unthinkable acts. To explain this danger and to warn against it, a story was told. The Wendigo was not originally a monster with claws and teeth. It was a spirit, a presence that represented greed, selfishness, and starvation. It preyed not on the strong, but on those already broken by hunger or consumed by desire. According to legend, the Wendigo entered the minds of its victims through dreams. At first, the thoughts were subtle: cravings, restlessness, disturbing images. Over time, those thoughts grew darker. Victims began to imagine consuming human flesh, not out of madness, but out of need. And if a person ever gave in, there was no redemption. The moment human flesh touched their lips, the spirit claimed them completely. Their humanity was stripped away, replaced by an endless, unbearable hunger. They were said to grow taller, thinner, their bodies stretching unnaturally as their appetite expanded. No matter how much they consumed, they were never satisfied. They became the Wendigo. Unlike many legends, this one was not meant to entertain. It was a moral law, a warning that survival at the cost of humanity would damn the soul forever. Greed, whether for food, power, or wealth, was the true evil. For generations, the story stayed within the tribes. But as time passed, the legend began to change. European settlers moved into the wilderness. Winters claimed lives. Entire expeditions vanished. And whispers began to spread stories of something tall moving between trees, of voices calling out in familiar tones, of shapes watching from the snow. The Wendigo was no longer just a spirit. It had become a creature. Descriptions began to surface. Witnesses spoke of a towering figure, impossibly thin, with pale skin stretched tight over bone. Its eyes were dark and empty, its mouth filled with sharp teeth exposed by shriveled lips. It moved silently, swiftly, and with intelligence. Some claimed it could mimic human voices, perfectly calling victims by name, imitating loved ones, drawing them deeper into the forest. and winter, they said, was its hunting season. Skeptics argue that these stories evolved to explain fear, starvation, and isolation. Others believe they were exaggerations, misidentified animals, or hallucinations caused by extreme conditions. Yet even today, people still report encounters, not legends passed down, not stories from centuries ago, but experiences from modern times. Reports with no evidence, yet no easy explanation. And this raises an unsettling question. If the Wendigo was only ever meant to be a warning, why do people still claim to see it? As winter tightens its grip on the northern forests, something changes. Sound becomes muffled beneath layers of snow, and distance loses its meaning. A single step can echo for miles, yet a scream may never be heard at all. It is in these conditions that fear takes root and where many claim the Wendigo begins to move. While ancient stories belong to the past, some of the most unsettling accounts are disturbingly recent. In the winter of 2015, a man and his wife settled into a remote property near Grand Lake, New Brunswick. The land was beautiful, quiet, and surrounded on all sides by thick forest. 4 acres of isolation. During summer, it felt peaceful. During winter, it felt abandoned. That year brought the heaviest snowfall the region had seen in decades. By late January, the sun was setting shortly after 4 in the afternoon. It stretched endlessly, and the silence outside felt unnatural. On the night of January 24th, just after 1 a.m., the man was pulled from sleep by his dog barking violently at the back door. Assuming the dog needed to go outside, he opened the door. The animal exploded into motion. Instead of stopping in the yard, the dog sprinted straight toward the tree line, growling and barking with a fury the man had never seen before. No matter how loudly he called, the dog did not hesitate or look back. Grabbing his boots and a flashlight, he ran after her. At the edge of the woods, he stopped. The dog's barking echoed deeper within the trees, branches snapping as she chased something unseen. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. No barking, no wind, no movement. He stepped into the forest, calling her name. The beam of his flashlight cut through birch trees and shadows, but revealed nothing. He advanced slowly, each step crunching unnaturally loud against the snow. That was when he heard it. "Babe!" The voice came from behind him. It was his wife's voice. Relieved and confused, he turned, expecting to see her standing at the edge of the yard. There was no one there. Then the voice came again. "Babe." This time, it sounded closer and deeper inside the woods. A cold realization washed over him. His wife was asleep in bed. She had never come outside. His flashlight swept forward, and about 10 feet ahead, something moved. What he had assumed were branches slowly rose upward, unfolding into a tall, spindly shape. When the light passed over its face, its eyes reflected nothing. They were not animal eyes. They were empty, black, watching. Instinct took over. He turned and ran. Bursting from the tree line, he sprinted across the yard and slammed through the back door. Only then did he notice his dog sitting calmly on the porch if she had never left. Inside, his wife was still asleep. The man later wrote that he did not know what he had seen. It could have been a trick of fear, a hallucination, something else entirely. But one thing was certain: he never went back into those woods again. Stories like this raise uncomfortable questions. Why do so many encounters involve voices? Why do they often imitate loved ones? And why do they almost always happen during the coldest months? Some researchers suggest psychological explanations: stress, isolation, and fear shaping perception. Others believe these encounters are misidentified animals, such as moose or bears, standing upright. But none of those explanations account for the voices. And this was not an isolated case. Only a few years earlier, in the forests of upstate New York, another man would experience something just as disturbing without ever seeing it. That encounter would leave behind no images, no sounds, only footprints in the snow. Forests have a way of making people feel small. At night, especially in winter, they feel endless. In December of 2014, a young contractor named John Crowder was working deep inside Brasher State Forest, near the St. Lawrence region of New York. His job involved cutting and marking trails for a future public opening. While most of his co-workers returned home on weekends, John often stayed behind alone, sleeping in a small wooden cabin near the trailhead. He was used to solitude. He was not used to fear. On the night of December 12th, snow had begun falling heavily. Just after 10 p.m., John added another log to the fire and climbed into his bunk, book in hand. The cabin was warm, quiet, and still. Then, thud. The sound came from directly above him. Startled, John froze for a moment before dismissing it. Snow falling from a branch, he reasoned. The storm was worsening. 5 minutes later, another sound followed. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Light, careful, almost deliberate. Again, John explained it away. A raccoon, maybe, or branches scraping against the roof. Then the sound stopped. An hour passed. Just as John closed his eyes, the roof erupted with noise. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps, slow and measured, moving across the cabin roof. This was no animal. The steps were bipedal. John sat upright, heart racing. Who would be out there, in the middle of the forest, during a snowstorm, at this hour? Eventually, he forced himself to act. Fully dressed already due to the cold, John pulled on his boots, opened the door, and stepped onto the balcony. Snow fell silently around him, absorbing every sound. The roof was empty, yet his attention was drawn to the upper branches of a nearby tree. He couldn't see anything, no movement, no shape. Still, he felt it, an overwhelming certainty that something was there, watching him. John reached for his flashlight and stopped. A sudden, instinctive warning surged through his mind, sharp and absolute. If you turn on the light, you won't survive the night. He didn't know why he thought that. He didn't question it. He backed into the cabin, locked the door, and stayed awake until morning. When dawn finally came, relief washed over him. Sunlight revealed a peaceful forest blanketed in untouched snow. Then John opened the door. On the balcony, directly outside the cabin, were footprints, bare, humanoid, deeply pressed into the snow. They led nowhere. When his coworkers returned days later, most laughed at the story, but a few went quiet. They told him in hushed voices that he was lucky. They believed he had been visited by a Wendigo. John never stayed alone in that cabin again. He never returned to the forest after that season ended. Yet, even these encounters, terrifying as they were, piled in comparison to what another man would witness years earlier in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Unlike the others, this time the creature would be seen clearly, and it would be feeding. Michigan's Upper Peninsula is not forgiving. Winter there doesn't simply arrive, it claims the land. Snow buries sound, trees stand frozen like skeletal remains, and the woods stretch so far that even experienced hunters can feel swallowed by them. In December 1983, a man named Charles Chuck Latimer entered those woods for what should have been a routine hunting trip. Chuck was not a thrill seeker. He wasn't chasing legends. He didn't believe in monsters. Born in 1939, Chuck had spent most of his life hunting the forests of Michigan. He knew the terrain, the animals, and the rules of survival. Friends and family described him as practical, grounded, and honest to a fault. 3 days into his solo hunt in Gwynn State Forest, the snow lay thick on the ground. Tracks were easy to follow, but the terrain was brutal. That afternoon, Chuck finally caught sight of a large buck. The animal stood at the far edge of a wide clearing, partially obscured by trees. Chuck checked the wind, moved slowly, and raised his Remington rifle. He took his shot. The buck twitched, then bolted. Chuck cursed under his breath. He'd hit it, but not cleanly. Still, a wounded deer doesn't go far. He began tracking it across the clearing. Halfway across, something changed. The forest went quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of snowfall, but a dead, hollow silence. No birds, no wind, no distant movement. Even Chuck's own breathing felt too loud. He felt exposed, as if he were standing in the open while something watched from the trees. Pushing the feeling aside, he continued forward. Just inside the tree line, on the far side of the clearing, he found the buck lying on its side. Steam poured from its nostrils into the cold air. The animal was dying. Chuck unslung his rifle and drew his hunting knife. That's when he noticed the white shape behind the deer. At first, he thought it was snow. Then it moved. Slowly, something rose from behind the buck. Chuck stopped dead. What emerged was not an animal. It was thin, unnaturally thin. Its body stretched tight, as if the skin barely fit the bones beneath. Its flesh was pale, almost the same color as the snow, making it difficult to separate from the landscape. Its face was wrong. Gaunt cheeks, hollowed inward, dark, sunken eyes fixed on Chuck without blinking. Its mouth was smeared with blood, and it was smiling. The creature crouched over the deer, shielding it possessively like a predator guarding a kill. Though it was low to the ground, Chuck could tell instantly that if it stood upright, it would be tall, far taller than any human. Then it screamed. The sound was sharp, piercing, and utterly inhuman. Chuck didn't think. He ran. He ran back, across the clearing, lungs burning, heart pounding, the scream echoing behind him. He didn't stop until he reached his camp, where he packed his gear with shaking hands and left the forest immediately. He abandoned the hunt. He abandoned the deer. And for years afterward, he abandoned solo hunting entirely. According to his son, Chuck spoke about that day often, always the same details, never changing his story. Even while dying of cancer decades later, he described that creature one final time. Thin, white, watching, protecting its meal. Chuck never claimed it attacked him, but he believed with absolute certainty that if he had taken one more step forward, it would have. For centuries, indigenous tribes of North America warned of a creature that was not born but created. The Algonquian peoples spoke of the Wendigo as a spirit of hunger, greed, and winter. It was said to emerge during times of extreme cold, famine, and isolation. According to legend, a human who committed cannibalism or even thought about it could slowly transform into a Wendigo. Not overnight, not instantly. The change was gradual. First came the hunger, then the withdrawal from others, then the loss of humanity. The Wendigo was described as tall, skeletal, pale as snow, with eyes sunken deep into its skull. Its heart was said to be ice, its hunger never satisfied. Psychological explanations. Some researchers point to isolation psychosis, prolonged solitude, extreme cold, and sensory deprivation can cause auditory hallucinations, voices calling your name, familiar sounds coming from nowhere. Cold also affects the brain. Hypothermia can cause confusion, paranoia, and even the feeling of being watched. Then there's Wendigo psychosis, a controversial diagnosis recorded in the early 20th century. Patients reported an intense fear of becoming cannibals and believed they were transforming into monsters. Some begged to be restrained or killed. Yet here's the problem. Wendigo psychosis does not explain identical descriptions across centuries, multiple witnesses seeing the same traits. Physical evidence like footprints, encounters involving experienced hunters and firefighters, misidentified animals. Others suggest bears suffering from mange. Hairless, emaciated bears can look terrifying, almost humanoid, when standing upright. But bears don't. Mimic human voices, walk across cabin roofs, leave bear. Human-like footprints guard prey with intelligence, and bears don't vanish silently into the trees. Something older. Some believe the Wendigo is not a creature, but a force, a presence tied to winter, starvation, and human fear. It doesn't hunt constantly. It waits. Cold regions, sparse populations, deep forests, exactly where encounters keep happening. Perhaps the Wendigo isn't everywhere. Perhaps it only appears when conditions are right. And if that's true, then the most frightening question isn't what the Wendigo is, but why it still appears today. Because one final account suggests the Wendigo isn't confined to legends or even forests. It may be adapting. Today, the Wendigo is often dismissed as folklore story, invented to frighten children or explain the horrors of winter famine. But legends don't survive for centuries without a reason. Across North America, reports still surface. Hunters hear their names whispered deep in the woods. Campers report screams that sound human but wrong. Search and rescue teams speak of shadows moving too fast between trees. And almost always, these encounters happen in the same conditions: extreme cold, isolation, dense forests, places where help is far away and survival is uncertain. Modern witnesses rarely claim certainty. Many say the same thing: I don't know what I saw, but it knew I was there. This hesitation is what makes Wendigo encounters so unsettling. These are not people looking for fame. They are ordinary individuals who walked into the wilderness, came back, changed. Some refuse to return to the woods. Others suffer nightmares for years. A few never talk about it again. Skeptics argue that fear fills the gaps where knowledge ends, that the human brain, under stress, creates monsters. And maybe they're right. But folklore experts remind us of something important. The Wendigo was never meant to be a physical monster alone. It was a warning against greed, against isolation. In that sense, the Wendigo never disappeared. Where desperation overrides compassion, where people are pushed beyond their limits. And perhaps that is why sightings haven't stopped. Because as long as humans face extreme fear, cold, and desperation, the Wendigo does not need to hunt. It waits. So if you ever find yourself deep in the woods during winter, and you hear a familiar voice calling your name, don't answer, because some legends don't want to be remembered. They want to be encountered.